Hello and welcome to News Central Now. I'm Darshan Usman. The top stories this hour. Federal government convenes meeting as Labour threatens indefinite protest over electricity tariff. Death toll from South Africa's building collapse rises to 32, with 20 still missing. Libyan customs boss arrested over massive illegal gold shipment. Details in a moment. Let's begin the news by telling you that the federal government says a new wage system based on employees' productivity in the civil service is underway. The government said with the system, workers on the same level could earn different salaries. The government said the formulation of an innovative wage system was being considered because it realized that productivity was a key factor in the growth of the country's economy. The Director General of the National Productivity Center, Nasir Raji Mustafa, disclosed this on Monday during a meeting with Labour correspondents. The federal government will next week hold a crucial meeting to address the demands by organized labor for the restoration of the power subsidy and the reversal of the hike in electricity tariff. The spokesperson for the Minister of Power, Mrs. Florence Eke, made the disclosure in Abuja on Monday. Organized labor held protest on Monday and has threatened to continue with the protest indefinitely, stressing that it might take drastic action should the government fail to reverse electricity tariff hike. The protest paralyzed activities at the Federal Ministry of Power and the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, and also disrupted the operations of the distribution companies across the country. The nationwide protests were triggered by the federal government's decision to raise electricity tariffs and remove the subsidy from the power sector. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria on Monday called for an immediate reversal in the hike in electricity tariff. This was as members of the union stormed the headquarters of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission in Abuja to protest the hike, saying that the increase, saddled with the rising cost of living and removal of fuel subsidy, is taking its toll on Nigerian workers. News Central's Emmanuel Bagudu reports.
The protesters took to the streets of Benin City in Edo State carrying several placards expressing their grievances. The state chairman of the Nigerian Labour Congress says that the protest was in solidarity with the union's picketing exercise nationwide.
Some of the landlord tenants, their annoyance is that they don't see lights, and at the end of the month, they will bring estimated bill to them. And in bringing that estimated bill to them, they will force them to pay. And which, if they did not pay, they bring argument between them and the workers. And so many of them have been, having injury in the past. Some are still in the hospital as we are talking. So we want them to bring the hike in the tariff of electricity down in the whole nation.
The state chairman of the Trade Union Congress says that the hike in electricity is similar to death penalty on ordinary workers in the country.
We have come here today to make Nigerians know that the trade centers feel the pain which they are going through. As we speak, people are paying for darkness, and rather they are increasing the price of electricity on a daily basis. Now, they said they are band A, band B. Some Nigerians are even bandless as we speak now because they cannot even find electricity to use. And with the poor production in electricity, a lot of people are being laid off from their jobs.
The protesters say they will not relent in their demands till they are met. In Abuja for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
In a similar vein, commercial activities were on Monday halted at the corporate headquarters of Benin Electricity Distribution Company after the organized labor shut down the premises of the company to join the nationwide picketing of electricity distribution companies over the hike in tariff. The protesters also closed down the Edo State office of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission in Benin City. Our correspondent, Emmanuel Bagudu, again reports. Now, to speak more to us on this, joining me to discuss this further is the spokesperson of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Benson Ukpa. Hello, Comrade. Thank you so much for joining us at this time. Hello, Comrade. Can you hear me? Comrade, can you please unmute your mic? All right, we'll try to reconnect with Comrade a bit later. The scheduled arraignment of former aviation minister Hadi Sirika and his brother Ahmed Sirika for yet another case of contract fraud in the sum of 19.4 billion naira didn't go ahead as the defendants were absent from court on Tuesday and out of Abuja. Counsel for the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Oluwaleke Atolagbe, informed the presiding judge, Justice Suleiman Belgore, that the ex-minister and his brother have also not been served with the charge in the case. He therefore prayed for an adjournment, which was granted by the judge. Justice Belgore subsequently fixed Thursday, May 23, 2024, for an arraignment. The AFCC is prosecuting the former minister and his brother this time on 8 counts to the tune of 19.4 billion naira. To election matters now, the Independent National Electoral Commission has warned that there will be no extension of the stipulated date for political parties in Ondo State to submit the list of their governorship candidates with their deputies for the upcoming election in the state. The chairman of the commission made this known during its second regular quarterly consultative meeting with political parties for the year 2024. Idong Joseph reports.
The meeting by the Independent National Electoral Commission was convened to prepare political party leaders for the upcoming Ondo and Edo governorship elections that are scheduled to commence in the next 4 months. The chairman of the commission updated leaders of the various parties present on the preparations for the elections in both states, saying that it has already made public the final list of candidates for the election in Edo State. He urged political parties in Ondo State to submit the names of their candidates before the required deadline.
Political parties have been given 23 days, over 3 weeks, from the end of primaries to prepare and submit the list of only 2 candidates, governorship candidate and running mate, to the commission. There will be no extension.
While urging political parties to continue to maintain law and order as they set to commence their campaign, he announced that INEC will resume its continuous voter registration in the both states to enable eligible citizens participate in the polls. He also appealed to political parties and other stakeholders to help mobilize prospective registrants for the exercise and to see the need for early registration.
The Commission has decided to conduct the registration at ward level and our state headquarters instead of our local government offices and a few designated centers, as was the case in the past. This means that there will be 192 ward registration centers in Edo State and 203 centers in Ondo State.
Before the meeting broke into an executive session, the chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council of Nigeria tasked politicians to shun utterances that will promote violence.
Political parties must adhere strictly by their constitutions in conducting congresses, primaries, and conventions. The high expression of interest and nomination fees charged by some political parties should be reviewed despite being internal affairs of the parties.
While the successful outcome of any election rests on the fact that stakeholders play their parts, it is the hope of many Nigerians that INEC, as the electoral umpire, will use the Edo and Ondo elections to regain the confidence of citizens away from the controversies of previous polls. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Thank you, Idong Joseph. Now we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, News Central Now continues. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has ordered all government agencies to purchase only gas-powered vehicles as part of the country's efforts to transition to cleaner energy and cut high fuel costs. In the directive issued on Monday by presidential spokesman Ajuri Ngelale, Tinubu said he expected all government departments and agencies to start disposing of all petrol or diesel-powered vehicles going forward. The president added that all new government vehicles, generators or tricycles must utilize compressed natural gas, solar power or be powered by electricity energy sources. He expressed his commitment to effectively harness the country's gas potential to alleviate the burden of high transportation costs on the masses. President Bola Tinubu has launched a campaign to promote inclusive education, skill development, and gender equity. The campaign, tagged #WeAreEqual, is an initiative of the Organization of African First Ladies for Development and seeks to promote and has also been launched in about 15 African countries, focusing on health, education, economic empowerment, and gender-based violence. Amadin Uyi reports.
The launch of the campaign, focusing on education with an aim at giving young girls a second chance, was widely attended by many. The First Lady of Nigeria says that the current rate of girls drop out from school should be a source of concern.
The alarming rate of school dropouts among girls are a stark reminder of the need for alternative solutions in their educational pursuit. The consequences of these challenges are profound, affecting not only their individual lives, but also attendant socio-economic implications to our nation.
President Bola Tinubu, while speaking at the launch, says that government must live up to its responsibilities and create opportunities for all citizens, especially through education.
We must continue to create opportunities for all our children to access quality education without leaving anyone behind, particularly the girl child. We must engender a society where everyone has the same opportunity, regardless of who they are, because doing that leads to a stronger and more peaceful and developed society for all of us.
He adds that the program will help young girls refocus their educational pursuits, giving them another opportunity at learning. The First Lady also added that the program will also give the girl child an opportunity to learn without discrimination.
We cannot afford to squander the potentials and talents of half of our population. The program not only recognizes the inherent potential within every girl child, but also offers a tailored educational approach that resonates with their unique circumstances.
This initiative offers a second chance to young girls who might have dropped out of school to be able to further their education and fulfill their dreams.
The program was initiated by the African First Ladies and aims to advance gender equality and narrow the gender gap across the continent. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadin Uyi.
The presentation of assorted food commodities from the National Strategic Reserves to vulnerable persons in Plateau State has begun. The formal presentation of over 19,000 bags of grains weighing 50 kilograms each from the National Emergency Management Agency to the Governor of Plateau State, Caleb Mutfwang, for onward distribution to the vulnerable persons took place on Monday. News Central's Chizoba Nyongwe brings us more in this report.
Earlier this year, President Bola Tinubu had directed the Ministry of Agriculture to release grains in the National Strategic Reserves for distribution to worst-hit persons in the country as part of efforts to cushion the impact of the removed petrol subsidy. A few months after, The presentation and distribution of same directive have begun. Director General of NEMA, represented at the event, gave further directives on the exercise.
The above food items will be shared equally to all the local government areas in the state. Also, based on the directives of Mr. President, 20% of the food items due to each local government area should be given to religious organizations, CAN and JNI, and 3% to be given to boarding schools in the local government areas.
Over 29,000 bags of rice, weighing 35 kilograms each, were also added to the assorted commodities by the governor to ensure the affected persons benefit more.
The distribution will go on seamlessly, transparently, and honestly, so that the true beneficiaries will be vulnerable people.
Plateau State Executive Director of Emergency Management Agency and some recipients of the gesture were appreciative.
They are a symbol of hope, a reminder that we are not alone in this fight. They are a testament to the power of unity and the unwavering support of our leaders.
President, with the present situation, he has alleviated a lot of lives, and we're very grateful.
I pray that as they are going to share it, let it go around.
Despite assurances that the commodities will be judiciously distributed, especially with the likes of the EFCC and ICPC being part of the team, concerns have been expressed over the manner palliatives provided by governments for the poor still end up in the hands of those who may not be in need of such assistance. In Just for News Central, Chizoba Anyowe.
Coming up after the break, Guinea massacre victims call for crimes against humanity charges. Details after the break. The news continues in West Africa, where lawyers of victims of a 2009 massacre in Guinea have called for the charges in the landmark trial to be reclassified as crimes against humanity as closing arguments got underway. Former dictator Musa Dadis Camara and 10 other former military and government officials are accused over the killing of 156 people and the rape of at least 109 women by pro-junta forces at a political rally. They face a string of charges including murder, assassination, rape, torture, intentional assault and battery, kidnapping, arson, and looting. As the trial, which opened in September 2022, entered its final stage on Monday, the court asked lawyers to ensure that defendants know their fate before the August recess. Togo's Constitutional Court on Monday confirmed provisional results from last month's legislative elections that saw President Faure Gnassingbé's ruling party win a crushing majority. Court President Jobo Babakani Coulibaly announced at its headquarters in the capital, Lomé, that Gnassingbé's Union for the Republic Party won 108 of the 113 parliamentary seats. Opposition parties won the other 5 seats up for grabs in the April 29th vote. The court has rejected all appeals lodged by the opposition.
Décision numéro EL 016/24 du 9 mai 2024 rejetant le recours de M. Palanga Lawele. Vu la décision numéro EL 017 du 9 mai 2024 rejetant le recours de M. Afangbedi Sedoufia. Pour l'ANC, un siège est élu Fabre Jean-Pierre. Pour FDR, un siège est élu Apéron Kokou Doji. Pour BMP, un siège est élu Adjamabo Dabri Kafi. Circonscription électorale des Lacs, 3 sièges. remporté par UNIR sont élus de Souza Adjouavi Irène, Gabiam Ayele Esther.
In Central Africa, the European Union has raised concerns about post-election violence in Chad for 4 days after the presidential election victory of junta leader General Mahamat Idris Deby Itno. After the results were announced on Thursday, soldiers fired shots in the air in Chad's capital N'Djamena, both in celebration and to deter protesters. The Chadian media reported there were some deaths caused and numerous injuries by these joy shots, but the government refused to give the number and forbade hospitals to do so, citing respect for medical confidentiality. Chadian soldiers were then deployed in large numbers across several districts of N'Djamena on Friday. The death toll from the collapse of a building in George, South Africa has risen to 32, with another 20 people still missing. Rescuers pulled 10 bodies from the rubble at the site on Monday and pulled out more corpses on Tuesday morning. Rescue teams have worked tirelessly since the 5-story apartment block, which was under construction, suddenly collapsed last Monday. 81 people, mostly construction workers, were at the site at the time. 29 people have been rescued so far, including a man who was pulled out on Saturday after 116 hours under the rubble. The Premier of Western Cape Province, Alan Winde, said he will not give up hope of pulling more survivors from the rubble. Now, joining me on the news to discuss this is Disaster Manager, Garden Route Municipality, Jared Otto. Hello, Jared. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, Jared, how is the search and rescue going? We're aware it's the second week now. What are some of the challenges, that's being faced?
Well, the rescue operation is still continuing day by day. We are now 191 hours into this incident. The staff is tired, but there is shifts relieved, so that's working well. The challenges we've got is identification of the bodies that we retrieve. At this point, we have retrieved 32 of the 81 people that was estimated to be on site during the collapse of the building. And of that, many of them is foreign nationals, and we are struggling to get the identification done. To this point in time, we've only been able to identify positively 6 of them. 5 were South African citizens and 1 was from Lesotho. So, yeah, that is in process. The post-mortems is in process, and we are on track. As I've indicated, the rescues are continuing. And as we speak, I think we are down to about the first floor of the building. Hopefully, we will find more people in there. And if we're lucky, maybe also somebody that's still alive.
All right, but what are the chances of finding, any of the victims that are still alive at this time?
Well, on day 5, we also thought the chances were slim, and we retrieved Gabriel. I know in Turkey, after earthquake, we retrieved somebody after 13 days. So I'm not giving up hope, and the teams on the site is not giving up hope, and they're working around the clock, and hopefully we can still retrieve somebody alive.
All right, well, that's good to know. But has any investigation been done to know exactly what the cause of the collapse was, and what is being done to actually hold those responsible accountable?
Yeah, I think you must realize it's still a crime scene, so the investigation is underway as we speak. There's 4 different investigations that was launched, one from the provincial government, one from the Department of Labour, one from the South African Police, and then also from an independent investigator appointed that's also, so they will compare notes, and going forward, I think it's going to be quite a while still before we get to what was really the cause of the collapse. This is not supposed to happen, not in this day and age. So everything that they are collecting, everything that is taken from the site is secured. It is seen as evidence. So we will get to the reason for the collapse.
All right, Jared. Now, we understand that most of the casualties are foreign nationals, and you did say that, you've been able to identify some people, and one of them is even from Lesotho. There also seems to be language barriers. Can you share with us more on this? Tell us more about it.
Yeah, initially, some of the families that came to look for their loved ones, we realized that there was Malawian people, Mozambican people, Zimbabwean people. We actually addressed that now. We've got translators in the hall where the people is housed, and it's been wonderful, the assistance we've been getting. We also got people trained in psychosocial support in the language of the people that was that in the hall, so that is being addressed, as well as also for the people in the hospital, those that were rescued, even that psychosocial support is provided in the language of the countries. So that's working well at this point in time.
Okay, so what about you talked about the families of the victims, you know, what would you say about what they're actually going through at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's devastating to wait to hear if a loved one is still trapped and hopefully retrieved alive. Every time that there's a notification of a body being found, I think sitting there waiting is really bad. We're trying to provide them with the necessary assistance, but we must realize this is a disaster and the outcome sometimes is inevitable. We are providing everything we can to make it as comfortable as possible for them. And from our identification process, we've tried to fast track so that we can at least link a family to a body found as soon as possible, because you can only get real closure once you know if it was your family member that they found.
All right, well, Jared, thank you so much for joining us and speaking to us on this. Our hearts go out to you and the people of South Africa, and we do hope that you're able to pull more victims out alive from the rubble and in good time. Thank you so much. Now, the South African unemployment rate rose to 32.9% in the first quarter of 2024 from 32.1% in the fourth quarter of 2023. Statistics Agency data showed on Tuesday, 2 weeks before an election. Unemployment has risen about 10 percentage points in the 3 decades since the ANC came to power. South Africans will vote in a national election on May 29th, and opinion polls suggest that the governing African National Congress is at risk of losing its majority.
The employed was 16.7 in the fourth quarter of 2023, and it remains as such, having increased only by 22,000. And the number of unemployed went up by 330,000 from 7.9 million to 8.2 million. And as such, when we look at the discouraged work seekers, they remain the same, having had a change fewer by 1,000. And indeed, those who are other not economically active have gone down by 214,000, sitting at 13.1 million versus where they were at 13.4 million. In terms of movements, all employment sectors increased between the fourth quarter of 2023 and the first quarter of 2024, except the informal sector. And we can see that the informal sector is the second one from the left-hand side, and we see that it went down by about 100,000 people.
In North Africa, Libyan authorities have arrested the Director General of Customs and other customs officials for attempting to traffic abroad about 26 tons of gold worth almost 1.8 billion euros. The Libyan prosecutor's office did not detail the suspected origin of the massive amount of precious metal, greater than the national gold reserves of many countries. Authorities in Misrata, western Libya, made the arrests at the port city's international airport. According to Libyan law, only the central bank can export gold. Libya has been plagued by political instability and violence since the 2011 overthrow and killing of longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Still ahead, U.S. to increase tariffs on $18 billion in Chinese imports. Details after the break. In other news from around the world, President Joe Biden is increasing tariffs on $18 billion in Chinese imports across a handful of sectors deemed strategic to national security, and attempt to cripple Beijing's development of critical technologies and instead prioritize U.S. production. The increases will apply to imported steel and aluminium, legacy semiconductors, electric vehicles, battery components, critical minerals, solar cells, cranes, and medical products. The new tariff rates, which range from 100% on electric vehicles to 50% for solar components to 25% for all other sectors, will take place over the next 2 years. Lyle Brainard, director of the White House National Economic Council, says China is using the same playbook it has before to power its own growth at the expense of others.
反对违反世贸规则，单方面加征关税，将采取一切必要措施维护自身正当权益。
French Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin has on Tuesday condemned in the strongest possible terms the violence affecting fellow New Caledonians and denounced riots committed by delinquents and criminals after a night of riots in the French Pacific Territory. The unrest erupted on Monday as protesters demonstrated against a constitutional reform being debated in the National Assembly in Paris that aims to expand the electorate in the territory's provincial elections. In the meantime, New Caledonia has imposed a curfew and banned public gatherings in the capital, Nouméa, after a day of protests around the French territory against planned changes to the constitution turned violent, with reports of widespread looting and businesses set on fire.
Je veux dire qu'au moment où le Parlement discute, puisque nous reprenons les discussions tout à l'heure, je veux condamner de façon extrêmement forte les violences qui touchent nos concitoyens calédoniens, des émeutes commises par des délinquants, il n'y a pas d'autre mot, parfois par des criminels, de ce que nous en constatons, et le courage des policiers et des gendarmes, et notamment je voudrais penser aux gendarmes et à leurs familles dans les brigades territoriales, notamment au-delà de Nouméa, puisque je constate qu'il y a eu 54 policiers et gendarmes blessés, dont certains gravement, des familles de gendarmes qui ont été évacuées, des volontés de mettre le feu, de tirer à balles réelles sur ces familles ou sur ces...
All right now we'll be going back to a live happening in Ghana, talking about the 3I Africa Summit, happening in Accra, Ghana. It's a 3-day event, and it is the second day today. It's the summit that seeks to generate greater momentum and traction for Africa's digital finance agenda by causing finance, policy, and technology to meet at the crossroad. So far, there are 4,000 finance, technology, and policy players, 60 topics to be discussed in 15 sessions over the 3-day stretch, and the topics will engender so many issues.
We are ready to do this, and we have already started. So, as you broke down the different layers of DPI, and just
one more question you can add, is it a rule only for private sector to come and work with you to fund this thing? You cannot do alone. So take the 2 questions.
Great. So if you look at Africa, the 2018, I think it said that there was a $100 billion financing gap, which is equivalent of $9 billion per year to bridge the digital infrastructure gap. We don't have that money, nor no institution acting alone has that money. But I can tell you that as a bank, we have been thinking about digital as an ecosystem from day one. So I give you examples, and even before the terminology of digital public infrastructure came up, we called it e-government, we called it digital identity system. So when you look at the bank open up a lot of e-government systems, which is digitalization of government services, I could mention numerous, from Tunisia to Ghana to Cape Verde, where we have supported with digitalization of government services with more than 100 government services in Cape Verde alone. For instance, one of the countries we work with, they do elections and in 5 minutes they all get their results. And in Tunisia, the Digital Tunisia project, which was supported by the bank to the tune of 134 million euros, also digitalized government services. In Côte d'Ivoire right now, we're supporting with the Zero Papier Domain grant. I hope that I got that right, 2030. And so we've been working on this on these principles. But the difference is across DFIs, we have not been quite disciplined about harmonization and interoperability. So when we finance in Tunisia, and I'll be very honest, and when we go to Cape Verde and when we come to Ghana, it's really helping them solve their national issues. And now, so more and more, we're stepping out of ourselves, and I'm happy that the DPI conversation is coming to look at the better idea, right? AFPD does work, the World Bank does work, different institutions and the private sector does work. How do we make sure we're integrating these principles so that when we're now having this regional conversation, when we have fixed trust, we know that at the technology and implementation level, there's something to work from. And that's where we're coming. How can we work with the private sector? There are lots of ways we can work with the private sector. So for instance, one avenue, especially in rural areas, Honorable Minister, you mentioned, one thing we help the private sector, which I know there's no business case for rural areas, is provide guarantees. They can provide off-take guarantees. We have instruments like that that help the private sector de-risk. So you come here, you're not sure if there will be off-take, you're not sure if, you will make returns. We have products like that where we can full credit guarantees, full risk guarantees that we offer to private sector, which helps de-risk it. We also offer services such that even though we finance public sector, it's operated through PPP structure by private sector, and through concession agreements, there's a cost sharing or profit sharing arrangement. So there are a lot of innovative and blended approaches that we are able to explore to make sure that DPI is a principle is in place. But I must add here that the thinking and the heart of digitalizing and making services interoperable has been in existence, but we haven't followed these disciplines of interoperability, accessibility, transparency. Now there's one critical issue because as a bank, we've also explored the regional infrastructure. So I could give you several examples, like the whole Central African Republic together with the EU and the AFPD, we were responsible for achieving 100% personal connectivity in Central African Republic, right? But these conversations are very difficult. By the time you go to DRC and Cameroon and maybe CAR, you start seeing what trust means. There's a lot of, and as Africans, our regional institutions, we need to have honest conversations with ourselves. What is a good enough policy framework? If you look at Côte d'Ivoire where I live, and Ghana, and look at the policy environment, Côte d'Ivoire's policy environment is closer to France than it is to any of its African countries. And Côte d'Ivoire is more willing to work with other countries than African. So we've played our role, we are playing our role, the private sector is playing our role, but you find that you have to have individual conversations with these countries, and then you have to fix individual boroughs. And we have ECOWAS, we have EAC, we have SADC, we have the African Union, and thankfully right now we have the digital protocol which was adopted in February. We need as Africans to have honest conversation beyond the political layer to say, if we put this framework in place, would you cooperate?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. So I look at get to the questions now. Now, Minister, I'm going to bring three uncomfortable questions to you now. Sorry, you can say we can talk offline if you don't want to answer this question. There are three elephants in the room. One is there's a huge nationalistic in Asia, particularly called data nationalism. Every country wants to hold data in their country, and they don't want to share. That is a huge deal breaker when it comes to one Africa or one Asia, whatever we call it. Data residency, data nationalism. Second, cloud infrastructure. We all know, if you ask any startup in this world, any digital economy application provider, they're no more thinking about local data center. They're designing software for cloud native. Second. Third, they expect a huge interoperability in terms of policy, consistency, taxation, or rules for how a digital service is treated. And these are deal breakers. As a Minister of Telecom and building these policies, your view on data, cloud, and taxation. I know it's a very controversial topic. Give us a quick view of how we can spend whole day on this.
not as tough as I expected it to be. Let me attempt an answer. Data sovereignty is important. Yes. We need to know where our data is being stored, how it is being used, who has access to it, who has control over it. So I'm all for systems that allow for data sovereignty. However, we need to have trust that my neighbor will also treat my data the same way as I'll treat his or hers, and so that we can begin that conversation. And fortunately, we've already started having those conversations on a regional level, beyond the individual level. But before you can even have that conversation, you need to know where your data is, how it is being handled and protected, how individual rights are also being protected by those who are handling that data locally. So data protection laws are important, and every nation needs to have it. But it needs to be flexible enough to also create room for pools of data to be utilized regionally. Now, within the auspices of the Smart Africa Alliance, we're already working along those lines. And we're developing a data and cloud policy for the African region, the Smart Africa Alliance countries, which are about 33 as I speak. So that's a significant number of residents or citizens on the African continent that we represent. So if these 33 are able to align their policies around data usage, rationalization, storage, and sovereignty, and can build trust in how we utilize that, we've gone a long way towards integrating the continent in a practical way, and we're already working on that as well. And that's also dealing with the harmonization of policies. But sometimes it takes a while for these regional operations to be implemented. So we also go the bilateral way as well, so that as a coalition of the willing, those who are ready to start working, go ahead and do so. And I'll use the ECOWAS Free Roaming Initiative as an example. It was mandated in 2015. As at 2022, we still haven't gone any way towards implementing it. So Ghana decided to talk to Cote d'Ivoire to see how we can do it on a bilateral basis. We've done so. So it's up to our regulators. Once the policymakers take the decision, to take the bull by the horns and make it work. So if our telecoms regulators in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire could implement free roaming, and now we're talking to Togo and Benin, and we're well on the way towards doing so within the next couple of months. It's doable, but someone has to show the way. So our central bank governance in this field as well can also start talking. Ghana, talk to Nigeria, talk to Cote d'Ivoire. What can we do on a bilateral basis while we work towards the larger example? Once two countries do it, the others see that, there are challenges, but we found a way to surmount it on this small level. So let's also join. So seamlessly we begin to build the framework which will enable us to integrate our systems globally. We have the Anglophone, Francophone challenge as well, and as you've indicated, systems that mirror our colonial partners. But we got independence years ago, so we should stop using that as an excuse to impede integration of our continent. We've been trading amongst ourselves for millennia. And long before we had any of these technologies available, we were walking and riding across the deserts to trade amongst ourselves. Our people are resilient. And where there's money to be made, they will go and find it. So let's help them utilize these new tools to do stuff that we've been doing for millennia. And break down some of the barriers that are also self-imposed. But sometimes we're difficult people, and so the criminals will also take advantage of some of these systems. So we need to be able to reduce the risks involved, and that is why these rules and regulations are important. But let's focus on the essentials. what can we do to stimulate growth on the continent while minimizing the risks to the consumers? And if we put our heads together, we will do it. Now, who pays for it? And this is one of my favorite hobbies.
The tax question. Yeah.
And I've said so several times. Those who utilize the infrastructure must contribute towards rolling out the networks. So the OTT value-added service operators, like the big tech companies, have to pay towards rolling out the connectivity infrastructure on which they deliver their services. And I make no apologies for it. The how has always been the sticking point. They recognize that you can't ride on the back of networks put in place with the sweat and toil of the network operators without contributing to it. You're utilizing it to deliver your Facebook, Google, Instagram, whatever social media services to the people and making millions from the advertising revenue that you're getting from it. That's fair enough. Share some of that with the network operators and the government to roll out that infrastructure. And the government also need the tax revenues that are generated from the businesses that are utilizing those networks. So instead of shying away from that conversation, we need to have an honest conversation about how to share, spread the pain evenly, and share the gains.
Minister, that's a very good point, because one of the friction in this system is that the lack of understanding, agreement among countries on common taxation for digital services. Very difficult topic. We are not going to debate here today, but we are letting it the audience to think about. This is coming. It has to come. This is genuine, legitimate. We've got to pay for what you get benefit out of it. Okay. I'll make a difficult question again. I'll try to make it. I think the last 1.5 days we have been hearing about, in the payment side, almost I feel that we're trying to solve a problem which is perhaps way further down. In my mind, payment has got this 5 layers. You have to solve, as you said, you have to solve the connectivity problem, then you have to solve the interoperability problem across the country, then you have to solve the settlement problem, and then you come and solve disputes, then you solve liability.